Want to officially welcome all of you to this month's Economic Development with the Middleton Chamber of Commerce. We really appreciate you guys being here and taking time to participate in this event. A couple housekeeping things. I'm sure you guys have done a million Zooms by now, but just as a reminder, when that slashes through your microphone, it means you're on mute. When that slashes through your camera, it means your camera is off. We would encourage you to leave yourself on mute during most of the portion. If you want to ask a question, of course, please take yourself off mute and do that. And we do encourage you to have your camera on if possible. It just helps to know that we're talking to people and not black screens out there, and that people are with us today. So with that, I am going to just want to give a shout out to our sponsors listed here on the page. So even though these events are held virtually, their support through the Chamber is tremendous in helping us keeping these programs running. So a huge thank you to them. We are actually going to start today's presentation with an update from the City of Middleton. So with that, I would love to turn it over to Mike and Abby.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm Abby Attune, the Director of Planning and Community Development for the city. I think I know most of you already. Mike Davis, our City Administrator, is on the Zoom as well. And so at the end of this, if there's time, we're happy to answer any questions about anything that's going on with the city. City Hall and the other civic buildings are still, for the most part, closed to the public, but we're still always available to meet remotely and to assist with anything that you need from the city's standpoint. I just wanted to give you a brief update on a couple of things that are happening right now in terms of economic development with the city. The first is that we are looking at doing our 10th amendment to our TIF District number 3. Many of you probably know that TIF District number 3 in Middleton is one of the most successful TIF districts in the state in terms of total valuation. It's been ranked 1 or 2 for the last several years. And if you just want to go to the next slide, Kristen. So over the course of 4 subtractions in the life of the TIF district, we have been able to subtract $340 million in assessed valuation from the districts. The goal is to put the land in a TIF district, get it fully valued, fully built up to its full potential, and then to subtract that valuation out. And that allows the taxing jurisdictions to not only have that underlying base value, but also any additional value increment that's created. So from that $340 million in subtractions, we've been able to return $6.6 million in annual tax revenues to the 4 taxing jurisdictions. Right now we have a permitted total expenditure amount within the TIF, within TIF District 3 of $178 million. We've spent about $118 million. The value that has been created in the TIF district is really incredible. I think our city attorney last night was saying it's over $1 billion in construction valuation. So it's really been pretty impressive. You can go to the next slide. So the goal with this amendment number 10, is to subtract 33 parcels, and then also to give us an opportunity to add 6 additional parcels into the district. And right now we're not able to add additional parcels in the district unless we're doing a subtraction at the same time. We also can't create a new TIF district until at least 2031 when TIF District 3 closes. And the reason for that is that the state limits us to 12% of our assessed valuation within the community in a TID, and we're at about 17%. This subtraction of 100 million in value will get us to about 16%, but we're still well over the state threshold. What that means is that the TIF is working, because when we put the properties in, we were below the threshold, but as additional value has been created, that has put us over that state allocated amount. This subtraction will allow taxing jurisdictions to receive an extra $2.5 million in annual tax revenues. We are partners with the school district on this. We also, of course, have representatives of the county and the technical college on our joint review board that is reviewing our amendment here. This this amendment would permit us to spend an additional 64 million, and that would allow us to facilitate about 100 million in additional tax value. And then we would have 508 million in value increment remaining in the district after the subtraction. You can go to the next slide. So this map shows the areas that we're looking at subtracting. This TIF district is starting to look a little bit like Swiss cheese because it covers a large area and we have subtracted quite a few properties out. The goal with this subtraction was to remove some of the parcels that are fully built out and fully assessed, while still remaining maintaining contiguity within the district. And also we aren't able to subtract any properties if there is a current TIF agreement associated with them. So two of the big ones that we're able to remove from the district are Costco and Spectrum brands. Those are fully repaid TIF development agreements. And so that allows us to remove two properties that are pretty high value. The properties that we're looking at adding are the ones that are cross-hatched in green. So you can see, like on the western part of the city, Pleasant View Road and Highway 14, there are a couple of properties there that are currently Builders Supply, the lumber supply company. We're looking to add those because the city is doing a significant upgrade of Pleasant View Road, and that will start in the fall of 2022. We're going to be 4-laning that road, as well as adding bike lanes, or I'm sorry, grade separated bike paths on either side. And we're also upgrading the utilities significantly. And so we think that there's going to be more interest in development along that corridor. On the south side of the city, that's simply a city-owned property that we needed to add back in order to maintain contiguity in the district. So that's the only reason for adding that. There's no value that will be created on that property. And then at the northwest corner of University Avenue and Parmenter Street, we're adding a couple of properties. You'll remember there used to be a PDQ gas station on that corner that was removed when Quick Trip went in and bought the PDQs. That one was too small and the city needed to add left turn lanes at this intersection. And so that left behind an uneconomic remnant is what we call it. And it's a property that can't be developed because it's too small to be developed on unless it's combined with adjacent properties. So that's an area that, you know, if it were to redevelop, it probably would need some assistance because it's probably not going to happen on its own. It's going to have some extraordinary development costs. So we're adding those in just in case there are interested property owners at that corner. You can go to the next slide, Kristen. So the next steps, we had our initial joint review board meeting, and then we held a public hearing. Last night, this was on the city council agenda and they recommended approval. And so the next step is on September 21st, we're going to have the final joint review board meeting. And if the joint review board approves the amendment, then we would bundle it all up and submit it to the DOA and get them any information that they needed and hope that they'll approve the amendment. So that's all for that item. The other topic that I wanted to discuss briefly is a partnership with the city and the chamber, as well as the Middleton Area Development Corporation, or MADC. We know that there are a lot of businesses in our community that are hurting due to the pandemic. We've gotten a lot of requests for different levels of support, anything from, you know, we've heard interest in having a grant or a loan program. We've had a business that just wanted some picnic tables brought to their space so that they could have some additional outdoor seating. We've heard requests for signs. And our council wants to get creative and think outside of the box for different ways that we can help the businesses during these times. We know, though, that financial support is really the #1 need that's out there in the community. And so our council gave us the directive that they wanted to pursue establishing a low-interest loan program. They were not interested in establishing a grant program. They did not want to put that on the table because any funds that we're using are going to come from funds that we are actually borrowing ourselves. Unfortunately, we can't use the TIF district to support this program. So Kristen and Kate helped us a lot and surveyed the businesses in the city to find out what type of low interest loan program might be beneficial to them. And so I just wanted to share the results that we got. We had 66 businesses that participated in the survey. And we learned that almost 70% of the businesses said that a zero or a low interest loan would be helpful for them. If you go to the next slide, the size of loan program that would be helpful, it looked like most businesses were going to need $10,000 and up. That's probably going to stretch our resources a bit in terms of at least like the dollar amounts that we're looking at for the first phase of this program, but that was the need that was expressed in the community. You go to the next one. In terms of a loan term, most of the businesses wanted a term between 2 and 10 years. And the next 3 slides just simply show what the business's priorities are right now, and you'll see that they're the initial concerns, the 3 to 6 month concerns, and then I think the next one is 9 to 12 months. Financial resources, no surprise, are the #1 concern for businesses. Mike put together a concept for this, working with Kevin Mahaney from the Middleton Area Development Corporation. And the goal here would be to establish an economic relief program. The working title is MERL. I'm thinking we might be able to come up with something a little bit better, but we'll see. And then we would have an initial loan fund amount of $200,000. 50% of that would come from MADC and 50% from the city. The intent is to offer low interest loans to businesses in the city with flexible repayment terms. And then if you go to the next one, we would be looking at an initial 6-month period that would be interest only, and then interest payments could be placed on deferral. The loan can extend 48 months. The approval process would reside with MADC. They are more equipped to handle a loan process than the city of Middleton, and also they have the added benefit of being able to keep information confidential, whereas if this were a city program and we received an email with financial information, that would potentially be subject to the open records law. And then the goal here is to have this program funded and up and running by early October. You go to the next. I guess one thing I will mention is that the initial program was looking at an interest rate somewhere around prime, which right now I think is 3.25%. There was interest from some of our city council members in getting that to a lower level or possibly even a no interest loan. So that's one thing that we're going to be working with MADC on over the next couple of weeks as we get this set up. The city is also very keen on non-financial business support right now. And so if there are businesses in the city that have a non-financial method of support, so it could be something like we need to get a sidewalk cafe up and running. Can we use a city space and let our business spill over into city property? If there's temporary sign regulations or things like that that we can waive, if there are parking restrictions, or even possibly if there's a designated parking spot that's needed for businesses for curbside pickup, even if it's on a public street. And then also we've been loosening up some of the alcohol restrictions on public lands. So like the photograph is of the Stonehorse Green area, and we're allowing alcohol in this space. We've also recently made a change where we're allowing it on a green space, another green space in downtown that's next to City Hall. So this allows people to go to, like, say, Long Table Beer Cafe and get a 6-pack. You can carry it over, you open the container on city site, and you can consume it there. We know outdoor spaces are so critical right now because most people still do not feel comfortable going inside of a restaurant and dining inside. So we're going to try to do other creative things to keep the outdoor spaces healthy as we get into the cooler season. We're looking at lighting. We're even working on the possibility, fingers crossed, of trying to get an ice rink at the Stonehorse Green so that it would give people a reason to come downtown and be outside this winter, and hopefully that would support the businesses. So if you're a business in Middleton, if you have an idea, the best bet would be to contact your alderperson that represents your district, because our staff resources are spread pretty thin, and the alder people are willing to help, and they can get things done pretty quickly. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. We appreciate that wonderful update from the city. I think it was interesting to kind of see where those loan results and what businesses were really looking for. So thank you for sharing. We are going to move into, skip that one, to Tom Still. Tom is joining us today from the Wisconsin Technology Council. And the Wisconsin Tech Council is a nonprofit bipartisan science and technology policy advisory board to the governor and the legislature. So he often works with, connects with entrepreneurs, investors, researchers, and others that have a stake in the tech-based economy. So with that, Tom, I'd love to turn it over to you.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Kristen. And I'm coming to you from quasi-Middleton, or almost Middleton. I think if from our home, if we were to go about a block or two in either direction, we are in Middleton. And so I guess I'm just a Middleton wannabe. I don't know how else to describe it. So thanks for having me here today. Well, and Kristen, you know, I may just tell you next slide or something, you can push them along. So
works perfect. Yep,
yeah.
I'm ready.
All right, go ahead to the next one. Thank you. So quickly, what we do: policy development, communications, networking events, virtual for now, right? But we were live and very much in the past, as some of these pictures show. And we do a lot of things to talk about best practices and hands-on advice for entrepreneurs, investors, and others who are kind of in and around the sector. We publish something called the Wisconsin Portfolio, which is a look at investment activity in Wisconsin. Every year, we spend a lot of time talking to legislators and others. State agency folks. We put on the Entrepreneurs Conference, which was virtual in June. We have our early stage symposium, which is coming up, normally live in Monona Terrace, but virtual this year. And we already have about 3 dozen investor groups who are signed up to take part in that. So not just from Wisconsin, but you know, some out-of-state money, which we all like, at least I do, for our folks. And so we also run the Governor's Business Plan Contest in Wisconsin, yes. And those are both business plan contests. One is for young people in middle and high school. So next, some of our publications, we often do things that are, as I noted earlier, to advise people in public life about ideas and things that can be carried forth. And there's a couple examples here. Our white papers from 2018, which we'll republish soon, and then our investment portfolio book from this summer. Next. And so, you know, we focus in technology, but today basically everything is technology. I just got off a Zoom meeting we had with 2 members of Congress, Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin, Ro Khanna from California, around their support for something called the Endless Frontier Act, which is in some ways it's all about investing in science and tech, but it's also about growing in our traditional sectors, especially manufacturing and agriculture. And so, you know, as you look at this slide, that's a picture of, I forgot where I found that, but it was, gosh, at least 100 and some years ago. And, you know, it showed kind of some of the things that were part of our natural resource base then, but it's changed. But at the same time, it hasn't, because technology is leveraging a lot of those sectors. So next. So why Wisconsin? You know, when we talk about, and we do this, we talk about why people should be here. It's a regular kind of thing that we do, because we want to make sure that we're talking about our assets, as you do in talking about the assets from Middleton and the larger region. But the predictable cost of doing business, affordable housing in most places. Our startup hubs are on the national radar, which is really good. And it's not just Madison, and of course, but then Middleton and other places, but that's been something that's caught some attention around the country. The healthcare quality is high, even during these tough times. Our infrastructure is pretty strong. We have geological stability. It's not a place where we're going to get tsunamis, hurricanes, earthquakes. I mean, it's a plus when you think about some of the things that can attract businesses. We have a fully funded state public pension fund. You only have to go south to Illinois and see what happens when you don't. And so that is a big advantage that you can see very close at hand. Our education quality is high in most places. Our tax burden has actually been going down. We were very much in the top 5 for a number of years, but it's slipped down into the mid-teens. And so that is progress from that tax perspective. And I think, and maybe you see this too, but it's appealing to a lot of different people, you know, whether they're retirees, mid-career, millennials. It's a nice place to be by and large. And so in an era, and COVID has really rammed this home, if you can work anywhere, why not work in Wisconsin? And kind of use our advantages here to attract others who may want to be in this great state. So next there. And so this is just a quick look at some recent rankings that kind of bolster, you know, what I was referencing earlier. But there are a lot of things that can point to where other people say that, yeah, Wisconsin's a pretty good place. And at the end of the day, I think we all support that and understand the value. So next one. We're also a somewhat unique state in a lot of ways because we're not like some places that are dominated by really big cities. Madison's 83rd-ish on the top 100. Milwaukee's 31st. Then you see, you know, the listings there, and there are a variety of cities that are, you know, 50K or more, 20K or more, some in the 12K or more. It's a state of mid-sized cities. And that can be a weakness in some ways if you don't have a major metro like a Twin Cities, perhaps. That can drive an entire state. That, you know, some people see that as a disadvantage. I also see it as a strength because there tend to be more livable cities and cities where there's more cooperation, public-private. I think we just saw an example of that at the outset of this meeting, where you're getting an update on things from, you know, from the city perspective. So there are all these different groups, whether it's trade associations, chambers, regional groups, higher ed, K-12, and other institutions that all are part of making sure that any one place doesn't bowl alone. That, by the way, is a book that was out about 20 years ago, and it was by an author who feared that the United States was becoming a society where everybody bowled alone. And so, but I think there are some good reasons to think that's not always true. So next. So this is just one slide. I mean, there are a lot of things, and you're all familiar because you all basically work around here or live around here because you know some of the great companies that are doing great things. But here's something that you don't normally see because it's a little bit behind the scenes, and it speaks to what I think is going on in a sort of a bio-industrial revolution in the United States. So the Great Lakes Bioenergy Research Center is on the UW-Madison campus. It's one of only 4 such research centers in the country. And they do basic research, of course, but they also do applied research, and they do so reaching out to a variety of companies, some of whom are listed here on this slide. So it's a really good, I think, hidden example of how there's a lot more going on between the academic world and the industry world than some people might normally think. So next on that. Middleton. You know, I think the whole notion of cool cities being hot places to live and work has been around for a while, but I think that we kind of embody that in so many ways in Wisconsin. And so I think, you know, Middleton is a great example of that. Some more here I'll show you. Next. In La Crosse, oftentimes there's a relatively small number of people who can help drive things. So in La Crosse, Don Weber is behind Logistics Health Incorporated. They're probably 2,000 or so employees right now. They help remake the riverfront in La Crosse. They are a part of things like the Performing Arts Center there. And, you know, sometimes it takes these entrepreneurs who are doing things quite doggedly to make it work. Don, literally on some of his earlier efforts to get this started, basically lost his shirt. The sheriff even repossessed his home, but he turned around and you know, Logistics Health is what it is today, and it's really been very much to La Crosse's benefit. Next. Beloit. Many of you know ABC Supply, probably know the Hendricks family or have heard of them. This is a city that was on some hard times. ABC Supply, great story about Ken Hendricks, the late Ken Hendricks. He unfortunately died in an accident, but he, in his early days, he was trying to raise money to build ABC Supply, and a bank told him that, so you call yourself an entrepreneur, huh? I thought that was a fancy French word for unemployed. And so it is not, obviously. And so Diane and other members of that family are carrying on the tradition, but that's one of the biggest, you know, companies in the construction world today, and they have done a lot to bring back Beloit. So next, Janesville. I mean, the General Motors exodus in 2009 blew a hole in that city, but it has really focused on trying to come back. Companies like Shine Medical and North Star Radioisotopes are part of that emerging story in Janesville. Shine Medical is led by a couple of folks with Madison area ties, one of which is Greg Pfeiffer, who's a nuclear physicist who's been behind the growth of that company. And North Star is, it's funny, we could have a situation in southern Wisconsin where the two leading suppliers of medical isotopes that are used on a regular basis in the United States are in one county. And that can be a really big boost for that area. But, and again, an example of how, you know, some of these mid-sized cities can really help lead the way. By the way, they make an isotope it's literally used about 55,000 times a day in the United States in things like cancer scans, heart scans. And right now, the only supplies of this are from outside the United States. And so that's not a really, I mean, as COVID has taught us with so many things, onshoring or reshoring some of these basics are important. And so they have attracted a lot of investment, a lot of attention, and they're doing great. Next, Eau Claire. Zach Homestead and another fellow were just students at UW-Eau Claire with an interest in music and an interest in computing and software, and they started Jamf in the basement of you know, their house, and it grew to a company that now is operating at least with offices in 8 different countries around the world. Still has a significant workforce in Eau Claire, another significant workforce just over the border in the Twin Cities. But they were drivers behind how the city of Eau Claire reinvested in its downtown, which was, it was hurting pretty well after some things like Uniroyal when they left there. And so the Confluence Arts Center has been a part of that. And the UW-Eau Claire, a really active chancellor there who's on our board, Jim Schmidt, was a big part of that. So that's another example of what's happening. And next, and so there's Zach. And this is key, I think, in today's world. Quote from Zach: "People told me I would never find the people I needed," meaning in Eau Claire. They were wrong. He did find the people he needed. There are software engineers and there are many other disciplines. They were when last I spoke with him about the workforce at just Eau Claire alone, he said he had 65 different academic majors who were part of that workforce, and many of people who weren't majors in anything, you know, and at least in a four-year university setting, because the company itself could train them, assuming they had the right skills and just overall and teamwork, communication, basic smarts, all of that. And it could train them to be what they needed to be for JAMF. And so there was an IPO for JAMF this summer, and it actually, that was on the NASDAQ, and it actually exceeded market expectations. So another great example. We can go next. And so, you know, again, there's an overhead view of Eau Claire, which I think speaks to its natural resources and its just natural beauty, which again are things that are replicated and easily available in many places in Wisconsin. So next, the Eau Claire, University of Wisconsin Eau Claire is a big part of that. Again, I'm trying to emphasize this partnership nature of how things can be done in terms of what's good for the economy and good for people. So there's, you know, they've done a lot of late, especially in working outside the Eau Claire sort of Chippewa Valley envelope. Let's go to next on that. And here's a great example. The Mayo Clinic now views Western Wisconsin as one of its major research centers. They also see it as a source of talent, and they've already got about 5,000 employees there in a number of facilities, but they're working a lot with the main Mayo Clinic in Rochester, but also in other places around the world. So again, that notion of partnership and how that can work. Now around the state, I'm seeing other things. Another member of our board, and I think if I saw the participants right, I think a couple of members of our board are on today, Jim Germain and from AT&T and Bob Hogard from Findorf. So welcome to them. Arjun Sangha runs what's called the WISES Technology Foundation, and it is the wharf for smaller campuses around the state. Think not Madison, not Milwaukee, which have their separate, you know, sort of hubs and patent organizations, but everybody else. And if you collectively put together the amount of research that's getting done in those other campuses, it's an independent ranking just recently had it, if you collected it all, it's second in the country for a certain class of universities, of small universities. We're seeing more research going on around the state is the message here, and that's good for those local economies. It helps bolster things. We're in a terrible period right now, right, with COVID, but at the same time, I think this is going to have some really great long range aspects to it. Next, Venture Home is something they're starting. It's basically tied to startups. It's basically using research and development that's taking place on the campus and making sure it's transferred out into those communities through entrepreneurs who are generally already there or sometimes attracted to those communities. And next. So this is just totally off the cuff because I did it pretty quickly, just off the top of my head, to make the point that we have a lot of resources in Wisconsin that could add to this notion of not bowling alone. These are resources that are there that different folks, I got us on the list, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, chambers like your own. You can just take a look at this list, and these are things that are here and are working and are doing things to move us ahead. When we started the Tech Council, gosh, what was that? 2002, basically, there wasn't that much there. And so I think a lot of effort over time by some great individuals in the private sector, also the public, an example of, I think, bipartisan cooperation, a lot more things have been launched, and they really do help in terms of building this whole ecosystem. So next. this is a reference to something we did today from like 11 to 12. It was a really good kind of town hall around this. The Endless Frontier Act is a bipartisan act that would invest $100 billion nationwide over 5 years to bolster the United States leadership in science and tech and dramatically increase investment in emerging tech. On our town hall today, Mike Gallagher, Republican from Green Bay, who's a leading House sponsor, and Ro Khanna, Democrat from the Silicon Valley in California, who's the leading sponsor on that side. It was kind of refreshing to see that much agreement, by the way, as we had them in a conversation between people from different political parties, which, you know, we're not seeing a whole lot of right now. But this is something that aims to reinvest in the tech side, the research side, but indirectly in the manufacturing side, because it's all about outcomes. It's all about trying to push out ideas that can lead to products, can lead to services, can lead to things that bring back manufacturing into the United States. So next slide here. 10 key technology focus areas. Next slide has those listed. There they are. AI and machine learning, high performance computing, robotics, automation, advanced manufacturing, natural and man-made disaster prevention, advanced communications, biotech, genomics, energy, cybersecurity, and material science. Those are all things that we can do well in Wisconsin and have done well. And we have the research infrastructure to continue doing well. So this is all kind of embodied in that act, which I think as you move ahead, you may want to, you know, try to pay some attention to, and if you read or hear something about it, because I think it can help transform things. It's a reinvestment that is basically based on an original paper written after World War II by a guy named Vannevar Bush. And Bush had been in charge of all the wartime sort of tech about trying to advance that. And he wrote a paper to then President Truman in 1945 about how the country, in order to have its own recovery from the war, and of course the Great Depression had not been long before that, needed to invest in science and tech. Well, it did. And it made the United States the center for that around the world. There are many countries that would like to compete with us. A leading example is China. There are reasons to think, and you don't have to read very much to see this, that China is a security threat in terms of some research and certainly some manufacturing. And so the notion of trying to bring this back and rebuild within our own borders is really important. So next slide. And then here there would be sort of interdisciplinary research hubs in different regions around the country. Wisconsin could be a candidate for that. And if we're able to bring something like that in, I think that's going to accelerate some of the great things that we already have in Wisconsin. We would not be able to attract it if we were where we were 20 years ago. But if we're where we are now, in terms of our overall assets, our complementary sort of research sectors, the notion of how we already have such a strong manufacturing base, I think that's going to allow us to be in the hunt for attracting some of that, which is eventually going to help everybody, including a community like Middleton. So next, and those are the sponsors I referenced earlier. You know, I didn't know if I'd ever see the day where Mike Gallagher and Chuck Schumer are on the same bill, but they are. And so that's pretty interesting right there. So yeah, so now hopefully, Kristen, I've kept it to a time where we could allow some questions, and we could do those live or.
Yep, absolutely. No, thank you, Tom. Yeah, I think if you guys want to take yourselves off of mute and ask those questions, we'd love to take them. Or if you feel more comfortable putting them into chat, we can take them that way. And this is open to Tom or Abby or Mike from the city as well. Anything you guys want to ask, please chime in.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, thank you. This is Don Powell, president of Chartwell and Middleton Chamber of Commerce board member. You've been a great friend to the Middleton Chamber over the years, and I thank you for your contributions in this economic development presentation as well as others in the past. Really appreciate the wealth of knowledge that you bring to our organization, and your intellect, enthusiasm, and excitement for Wisconsin is contagious. So thank you. Keep up the great work. There's so much in this presentation that we could comment on, but whether we're from Kenosha to Superior, there's so much going on in Wisconsin. But I'm always intrigued with the development and progress that the University of Milwaukee is making with their Center for Freshwater Studies, and what they're doing to assist the Great Lakes and making sure that that valuable resource continues to be available to Wisconsin and all the states around there. So I didn't know if I missed something within the presentation on that, but I'm always curious about that because that just seems like such an original program.
It is, and thank you for your remarks, but also thank you for that question, because not coincidentally, it happened. Chancellor Boney from UW-Milwaukee was on the town hall meeting that we just completed just before this, and talked about the Freshwater Institute there, which at this point is the only graduate freshwater institute in the country. And then he made the point that it's not just him and that campus there. It's industry throughout Milwaukee area and the state, but also other freshwater programs and other campuses across the state. Madison, Stevens Point, La Crosse. I think he mentioned Green Bay as well. So fresh water is obviously one of the great assets in Wisconsin. It's going to keep people here. It's going to attract the kind of talented people we want. And yeah, I didn't mention it here, but yeah, I could go on about it. But it's a wonderful asset for Wisconsin. They even have now a semester at sea program, they call it, where they've got a ship that's moored there in Milwaukee that works with students and researchers and gets them out on the lakes. And when I say the lakes, I mean like Michigan, Huron, Superior, pretty far ranging, everywhere in the Great Lakes Basin. So great asset. And yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Hey, Tom.
Van Nutt, how are you?
How are you, sir?
I'm excellent. Good to see you.
Good. Two questions. One, is rural broadband still on the radar? And two, can you talk about what seems to be an entrepreneurial explosion in Milwaukee?
Yeah. I'll start with broadband. It's very much on our radar, and it has become more so with elements of state government. For a while, there was, I think, just some maybe incremental progress. I don't want to say there had not been any progress on it, because there had been, but Wisconsin still is in a situation where for most rural communities, there's only one broadband choice, which makes it, right, I mean, a competitive or an economic sort of question for those communities where that's true. I don't know if we'll ever reach the point where everybody on a rural road 3 miles into the woods will be able to be hooked up on fiber, right? I mean, that's just a really expensive thing to lay. But well, and as I noted earlier, I think Jim Germain's on this call, so maybe he can pipe in as well. But I think there are other emerging technologies that are going to make it more likely that there are places that can be reached around Wisconsin that were not reached before. And why is it important? Well, it's not just because, everyone wants to watch Netflix, right? Yeah. It's because you want economic development in areas that otherwise might be limited to whatever that Main Street sort of storefront is. And so, you know, I see places around the state where companies that are otherwise quite isolated are selling a lot of goods and services by being online. And the more we can do that, the better. It's also great for education. It's also great for healthcare. Think about telehealth, especially during this period with COVID. I mean, that's sort of revolutionized that. I mean, the amount of telehealth visits during this period compared to where it was before is geometrically increased. There are things, let's see if I get this acronym right, CAF2, CAF2, which basically is a federal investment in broadband. Wisconsin received the second highest amount of dollars of any state for that. And that's being deployed now. So that's made some progress. It was only behind California. So progress, yes. Is it going to be overnight? No.
No.
Is everyone at the end of that long country road going to have the, you know, the fiber connections they need? No, but there are other technologies that will, I think, in many ways rival that.
Thank you.
And then entrepreneurism in Milwaukee. The Milwaukee area for a bit was a bit, you know, behind, I'd say, the Madison area. I think some of the companies there, the major companies there early on were not seeing the potential for innovation, whether internally or in startups that could be sort of around the orbit of big companies in some cases. But that has begun to change, and they're catching up quickly. The UW Milwaukee is part of that. I mean, the kind of research partnerships that UW Milwaukee has with major industries in the Milwaukee area is tremendous. Major companies like Northwestern Mutual are pushing entrepreneurism and innovation as well. So a lot has happened in a relatively short amount of time in the Milwaukee area, and that's really good because we need, you know, we need our two largest cities to be as innovative as possible, especially, you know, in the private sector, and where possible, have them collaborate. And we see more examples of that up and down the I-94 corridor. So hope that helps.
Great. Thank you. Yes.
Good. Good. Yeah. Others with any.
We had a question from Teresa. Teresa, if you want to go ahead and ask, you're welcome to.
Yeah. As we're all watching the West Coast burn,
Yes.
there was an interesting article in the New York Times Magazine about climate migration, how it's anticipating that a lot of people won't be able to live in certain areas of the country anymore, whether it's from rising sea levels or droughts or, you know, the prevalence of fires that we're experiencing right now. So people will start to move north, and you think, wow, you know, the northern states will become more temperate, but unfortunately, Wisconsin is supposed to experience, especially in summer, levels of humidity that will make outdoor work and recreation almost unbearable. So I'm just wondering, Tom, as you go around the state and you're talking to business owners or entrepreneurs, are they in general considering what we've got coming down the road with climate change, or do you sense that a lot of people are just not that concerned about it?
I think it's one of those things that's probably in the backs of many minds, but at the same time, I think for a lot of them, they're, you know, to use a phrase, they're killing the nearest snake. They're more concerned about what maybe the effects of COVID were in their communities right now. Broadband is a great example. Van asked about that. They wonder if they, you know, how much progress they can make there. They wonder about the general economy. In some smaller cities, well, I was just up in Wisconsin Rapids not too long ago. The Verso plant there is closing, the papermaking plant. That's 900 jobs in a city the size of Wisconsin Rapids, right? I mean, that's a big hole. And we've seen other examples around the state. In fact, I referenced some of them. So I think for most people right now, they're thinking about the economy, how it affects them and their families and their communities first. And then there are a whole set of issues that follow on that. And I think the notion of the environment and climate change would be among them, because I've had reasons lately to talk to people who are in the forest or in the forestry industry. And so they're worried about things like, when a Verso plant closes, where's all the wood going to go, right? And for some of them, I mean, one answer is going to be small biodigesters that may be able to pelletize wood for other uses or produce energy from that kind of organic material. But again, I think that's driven as much by the economy, where, you know, you got paper plants that have tons and tons of hog fuel sitting around. That's kind of the waste wood. And you have, you know, those kinds of issues that are out there. So anyway, I guess to summarize, sorry to go on so long, but it's basically economy first, other things second, is what I'm seeing and hearing around the state. And, you know, tourism, I bet you before long, they're going to worry about that, right? But right now they're just trying to see if they can cover, because that's got to be one of the hardest hit industries by COVID. Yeah. I think I saw something else flash up quickly, Kristen. Another question, maybe.
Got anything in chat?
Oh, okay.
Doesn't look like it. Yeah, we're welcome and open to other questions from you guys. If you have them for Tom or for Abby and Mike from the city, they are still here as well. So
Yeah. I'm just saying hello to a couple of folks who are out there.
yeah, well, I'll just pop onto the screen as you guys think of those last minute questions. I just want to plug a couple upcoming chamber events. So if you guys have missed networking and seeing more of your chamber member friends, we are hosting our version of virtual networking next week, Wednesday, the 23rd, that we're calling FaceTime. So would love to have you guys join us there. And then our next Get Moving Middleton will be October 1st. So registration for those are open on the website. And then again, just a huge thank you to the sponsors for this program. A special thank you to Tom for taking time, and also to Abby and Mike for putting together a presentation and sharing that with the membership. We really appreciate all of you guys for doing that for us. So we are happy to hang on here for a few more minutes for questions. Otherwise, if you are ready to move on with your day, thank you for joining us, and we appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.